All right. Well, welcome to today's webinar. My name is Kyle. I'm the CEO here at Reviewr. I kind of want to share my screen just to kind of help kind of power this discussion here just a little bit. So kind of today's topic, we want to talk a lot about engagement. And we'll kind of get into our introduction of who we are at Reviewr, why we exist in the first place. I think it really kind of lends itself to today's kind of conversation that there's more to these entrepreneurship focused competitions than just people showing up pitching and getting a scorecard, right? There's so much more that goes into it, and what the value that we as organizations can provide, not just to the students or the teams or to the entrepreneurs, but also to the volunteers and the donors and the sponsors and the stakeholders, etc. So kind of we'll get into our introduction here in just a minute, but from a housekeeping perspective, this topic wasn't our idea. We've heard from a lot of our clients some of the different elements that, hey, when should I be running my competitions? How many phases should I be having? What type of data should I be collecting? How do we make it easy for our judges? How do we do the feedback? And so this is going to be a multi-part webinar series. You, the audience, can kind of control future topics and touch points and things that you want to kind of talk through. But again, this is just one of the few touch points that we're going to have in kind of this webinar series that we're doing as we head into the upcoming competition months for a lot of organizations. But today I want to talk about kind of four areas or so. So number one is collecting the essential information that we need from the teams, right? So who are they? Who are their team members? When should we be collecting that? What type of content should we be collecting at them from these different types of stages? And then on top of that will be kind of the next topic, which would be the interactive side of things. So the documents, right? So there's business plans, there's pitch decks, there's canvases, there's executive summaries, whatever kind of your shtick is, or what your model looks like. How are you collecting that information, not just on the front end, but also long term? How are you empowering these entrepreneurs to capture feedback, reiterate their ideas, test MVPs, add new deliverables, and kind of what does that exchange look like in an interactive environment? And then the last piece is really kind of broken into two. It's how do you empower your judges to score them in a timely manner and offer them the energy and the time that the entrepreneurs and the applicants deserved from them, but also allowing them to provide coaching and feedback and maximize the experience for everybody involved. And that's really where I want to get into our introduction on Reviewr, and why we started our company in the first place. So as you may or may not know at this point, Reviewr is the leading entrepreneurship focused competition platform in the world, right? So we're powering hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these innovation focused competitions for university systems, for accelerator programs, for venture capital firms, for government economic development institutions, for corporations doing corporate innovation, you name it. And how do we get to this point? Again, so I think that the large number of people, at least on this webinar, are business schools as well as entrepreneurship centers on campus, members of the GCC, things of that nature. So obviously, 50 plus universities are using us, but how do we get here? It really goes back to why we started the company. So our team kind of was partaking in these competitions from both ends of the spectrum. We had team members who were entrepreneurs who were either working on businesses or purely ideation phase, who were competing at their local institutions for competitions. And unfortunately, back in 2010, 2011, tools like us didn't exist, and so you had some ideas that just really weren't quite up to the standards of the competition. They were early phase, they were just pure ideation, they were students, and they were getting these automated messages or notes from the competition organizers saying, hey, you didn't win, try again, or hey, you didn't even make it to phase two, good luck next year. And it was so frustrating for these entrepreneurs because they put their hearts and their souls and their time into these programs just to be told and kicked to the curb and said, try again, when they have no idea how do you try again with there's no feedback that was provided to you? Was it their idea? Was it the execution? Was it the team? Right? All these elements that go into failure. How do they take failure and turn it into a positive for some type of self-development or growth? Again, sometimes they're high school competitions that we're seeing this. So you have literally high school classes who are coming up with fake businesses, being told, "Sorry, you didn't win. Try again." Is that going to disparage them from even attempting a second chance or even trying to start their own business in the future? That's the last thing that we want to see. On the other end of the spectrum, we literally had judges who were scoring these competitions. They're very prestigious competitions, and they're being mailed literally business plans and binders across the country. And they're saying, hey, here's 30 or 40 binders, 30 pages each. Please read through all these, fly to our institution for the pitch event. But then before you get here, make sure you have a bunch of handwritten notes and feedback and scores in those binders. So we actually had, judges and staff members who were literally sitting on airplanes, handwriting comments and notes, not necessarily just scores, but notes on, hey, great idea. This, and this needs refined. Would love to connect, would love to be a mentor. Just for them to show up on campus, give those binders back to the competition organizers, for them to rip out the scores, announce recipients, and then push aside the rest of it. Just later on to find out that all those handwritten notes and feedback that the judges were wanting to give never got back in the hands of the entrepreneurs. So really, really frustrating. That's what led us to build Reviewr. It was kind of two parts. Number one was a logistic perspective. We get there's a ton of moving parts that goes into a competition, especially nowadays, when these competitions should be all year round, right? They should be phases. They should be linked together. They should be from a development perspective. But the more that we do things the right way, the more complicated in nature that they become. So from the intake of the applications to the multiple different deliverables, from the receiving of feedback and reiterating, adding new deliverables, to coaching, to mentorship, to judging, to scoring, to in-person events, to online voting, right? All these pieces create a whole bunch of extra legwork. We're here to help you with that. On top of that, how do we at its core provide a valuable experience to everybody that participates, from the person who wins $100,000 to the person that gets last place, to the judges or the investors who are volunteering their time, to the donors and the sponsors to your organization, to you as a staff, right? If we're going to put our energy and time into these programs, how do we kind of practice what we preach to our entrepreneurs and kind of provide the biggest impact as humanly possible? So that's what we set out here at Reviewr to solve, and we're very much doing so on a daily basis. And again, the main goal today, again, is two parts. One is I want to talk through this kind of topic that we're going to go through, but really what I want to do is I want to showcase, I think, one of our clients who I think is doing just an incredible job with how they've structured their competition. That's the MIT 100K. Specifically how they've broken into three kind of key distinct parts. They have the accelerate side of things, the pitch competition, and they got the launch side of things. And each step or each track of their competition is built to progress and grow off of the previous one. Or if you kind of look back, they provided value to everybody for the last 365 days. And really, where does this begin? That's collecting the team data. So in a second, I'm going to leave this screen share and I'm going to go ahead and show Reviewr, because I want to show physically how they're using Reviewr and the type of information that they're collecting. I like to think through this process of like a who, how, what, and when, and why. But we're going to go out of order, because I think before we can talk about the why we do things or what we're collecting, we got to kind of focus more on the when. And I talked a little bit about how I want to see these competitions broken into like a multi-phase process that link together from one stage to the next. So the short answer to that is always, these competitions are never ending. In fact, I've seen some universities or some institutions that are having applicants or entrepreneurs signing up all year round. They might have a dedicated time period where the competition is actually being ran, but they have inspired entrepreneurs who are either part of a team or looking for a team, who are submitting some type of information to you. There's team building that's happening. That way, when the competitions open up, there's either some type of initial legwork are done. There's some excitement around. So it's always being happen. But from a real competition perspective, I think you break into three kind of distinct categories. And I like to think of it as a play. So you have act number one, which is in the fall, and that's the initial pitch competition. It's all ideation. It's the generating of the excitement. It's engaging the staff. It's engaging the students. It's engaging the community. But it's all about ideation, right? You've got, potentially some existing businesses or some that are just purely ideation. They're going to show up. They're going to pitch. And then from that pitch, that really sets the framework or the groundwork for acts number 2 and 3. That pitch may completely evolve into a whole brand spanking new business. It could be killed or it could be a new one. They could pivot. Maybe their pitch is quite solid and there's a local mentor that we can pair them up with to take that from an actual ideation idea to a full blown company in 6 to 8 months. But that's the idea. Phase number one is, let's get our ideas on paper. Let's get these teams built. Let's get these problems and the solutions and the value proposition at a high level started. And that transitions us into act number 2, which is going to be the development. Again, we already just pretty much talked about that, but this is where we're going to take kind of the incubator or the accelerator mindset or that ideology. We're going to take these kind of ideas and we're going to really strip them down. We're going to pair them up with mentors and local industry experts. Engage your alumni, your local business leaders that have gone through your institutions. It's a way for them to kind of submit additional pitch videos or business plans and get feedback and then ditch it and rewrite it and resubmit it again. It's back and forth process that goes on for multiple months, which then kind of culminates in the spring to what I'll call act number 3 are kind of the final act, the grand finale, the big stage. And really what that is, it's a day to celebrate. These are going to be your applicants who are going to show up. They're going to do their final pitches. They're going to look dramatically different than day number one, but that's the entire goal. When I say dramatically different, it could be everything from like, hey, remember so and so that pitched about this? Well, look at them now. They're pitching this. It's a whole new idea. It could be, hey, remember that really, really good idea that pitched on day number one? Where are they at now? Like, what happened with that idea? Do they have a prototype in place? Have they sold actual revenue yet? Or it could be like, hey, remember their confidence on stage with their presence, right? It's all about self development. And the idea is to celebrate not just them, but also you and your stakeholders and your audience and your community. Let's generate a whole bunch of excitement around the programs of like, look what we're developing. And then that bleeds into next year and then the next year and the next year. And every year it's so much excitement around that final pitch, knowing that the labor goes into the spring. So that's kind of the when behind that. I already talked a little bit about why we're doing it that way. But again, it's meant to be a continuous self-development. We don't want to see these competitions that are happening once a year or 15 times a year where people just show up, pitch, and they're given a score sheet or maybe $100 check. That doesn't provide any value whatsoever. Those individuals that are winning these pitch events and getting some type of monetary cash value are well on their way to success. But is that really what's going to drive success? Probably not. The feedback and the self-development that goes into it is. And so, again, it's all about linking these processes together. It's the formulation and the development of teams, uncovering strengths and weaknesses of different types of team members, adding teams, practicing and doing the pitches, the local mentorship or pairing up with local mentors or alumni, and things like that. And of course, you're going to showcase and have the final pitch at the end. And then the what. And this is really, I know, long-winded, but this is where I want to really now dive into a screen share of Reviewr and kind of talk about what are you collecting with those three different acts. And then on top of that, we're just going to kind of continue that conversation, look at the file uploads, right? Because that's a core aspect of these competitions is being that's 2023 or whatever year that you're watching this, we want them to be very, very interactive, that continuously is engaged with and re-uploaded and refined. So how do we manage that process and that workflow? So as you can kind of see on my screen, there's three acts. Act number one is the initial pitch. That's really the main robust data capture. And we do that initially because we need to get some type of framework in place. But everything that you see here from the problem to the solution, all of that then in act number two is where it gets refined. So problems change or solutions are added, right? The competitive marketplace changes, new problems, new ideas come into play. That's where you're having business plans that are being submitted or pitch. It's where we're collecting the final phase deliverables and working amongst staff and teams to kind of make those changes as we go. And then act number three obviously is the final pitch. So for the most part, nothing's really being collected in act number three. It's the final submission of all the deliverables and content that's been worked on for the 3-4 months leading up to it. But again, this is where maybe we incorporate a thing like fan voting or live audience voting or things like that. So what does this actually look like? And so again, I'm going to show you Reviewr very specifically, though. I'm going to show you exactly the MIT 100K and kind of the three parts to this competition structure. So hopping in here, so the majority of our clients, including the MIT 100K, will like to use their existing web presence for at least the initial marketing push. Strong brand, strong web presence and content and branding. So why would we change a thing? So the majority of them will have information about the competition. And then once these programs go live, there's a hyperlink that says, hey, click here to submit. And that's what transitions them from their web presence to Reviewr. Now, where you send them, completely up to you. I've seen everything from like a redundant landing page that kind of reiterates dates, deadlines, expectations, rules. I've seen people skip this and instead they jump right into the account creation or the profile page. Totally up to our clients. Obviously, with the MIT 100K, they're using a combination of both. Now, I do want to pause here because I've used the terminology profile quite a few times just now. But there's so many moving parts in a competition. You've got teams. When you go back, you've got people, you've got teams, you have team members that are either joining or being dropped. You got team formation, you've got the deliverables. So everything from problems to solutions to competitive advantages to the market size, target market. You got file uploads, which come in a wide shape and size and variety, from pitch videos to PowerPoints for pitch decks to PDF business plans to interactive Word documents, you name it. And then a lot of times it's multiple times, right? Just because you submit a pitch video once or you submit a pitch deck once, that isn't going to be the end all be all. In fact, it shouldn't be, right? What I would expect is a pitch video or a pitch deck gets uploaded, and then comments are left, it gets re-added again. Comments are left, it gets re-added again. That's going to happen 100 different times between act number one and act number three. There's going to be feedback that's happening back and forth. There's going to be winner selection. So how do you take all these elements, and on top of that, the other elements that we're not going to talk about, the judging process, the multiple categories, the communication, and centralize them into one hub. And that's really what Reviewr is. So that's what we're looking at here. I got Kyle here, who is a applicant to this competition, creates his profile. And then again, this is firsthand, this is the MIT 100K launch submission process. So every question within their form. So we got qualifying questions. Are they even eligible to partake in the competition? If not, don't waste their time. If so, it kind of progresses them on. And this is kind of where you start to see some pretty robust workflows happening in the back end. So we got the team's name, their logo, and then what we can do here is we can start to collect, what does your competition structure look like? Are you doing it based off of industry verticals or categories? Is it based off of the different types of phases? Is it based off of geographic locations? I've seen everything. Is it multiple rounds? So the idea here is that Reviewr is a education SaaS-based company, and behind the scenes, maybe I'm pairing them up with SaaS-based judges, or I'm setting them off to SaaS-based mentors. Maybe your data collection is different. Maybe obviously you're going to collect different questions from the health and wellness companies versus the business to consumer. So the adaptive workflows are all kind of nested within here that based off of choices that are being made, potentially different things are happening for other people. So we kind of collect some of that information. We are categorizing them. We're going to get into team captain information. So who are they? Where are they coming from? And then of course, who's their team? How many team members do you have? The option to add each additional team member's personal information. Maybe you want to grant edit capability. So maybe it just isn't the team captain. Maybe in this example, Nate is going to come in and fill out his portion or add on to it. They're going to collaborate. Totally doable within Reviewr. It's also some of the different trends that we've seen. So for example, a lot of our clients are starting to collect more robust personal or demographic data about the applicants or the teams, backgrounds, ethnicity, all that kind of fun stuff. And so if that is the case, I think it's really important and powerful metrics to have to make sure that we are as a society continuing to grow and improve, but also it should not be included in the review and selection process. We don't want to see unfair or biased selection. So just because you're collecting personal or potentially PII within Reviewr, it could be for your eyes only, right? So things like demographics or ethnicity does not get shown to the judges or to the review committee. So very powerful stuff happening here. Kind of moving on, the last piece of this is going to be the type of content being collected. So in this example, I'm collecting a bunch of information about the team. I got, their logos, I got their website, I got, 75 words or fewer, who are you? And then we're jumping into the core of this application, which is going to be the value proposition. So in this example, I'll go slow, take notes. We're asking for what is the problem you're trying to solve? What is the solution? Who's your competition and what's your competitive advantage over them? Who's your target market? What's your go-to-market strategy? How are you planning to monetize this or make money? What steps are being taken or will you take to validate the idea? How are you measuring success? What are those different types of metrics and milestones that you're working against? Who's your team? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? How are they equipped to tackle that problem that you're trying to address? And then some of the more optional things. So, for example, like, do you have advisors? Have you collected any investments? Have you raised any funds? Have you started a business plan? Do you have a pitch deck? Again, this is really the core where, in act number 2, all this gets refined, but we want to collect as much of it as we can now and use it as a starting place. So in the MIT 100 case perspective, that's about it. They're collecting all the information on the front end. You're going to have e-signatures, terms and conditions, and then once they submit, boom, they move on to the next step. Now, I talked a lot about kind of the multi-phase side of things. I'm going to completely jump around at this point because I do want to kind of look at what is phase 2, which is the launch, or the accelerate, and then phase 3, which is launch. What does that look like? So in this use case, entrepreneurs can obviously, once they submit, they can come back into their application, they can access feedback from the team, they can continue to make updates, they can make edits, all the privileges that you give them. But I do want to kind of pause here because the idea between like rounds 2 is not a whole lot. Not a lot of stuff is happening as far as new deliverables. So what I would expect to see happening here is we've got all these problems and the solutions and the target market. There's going to be a pairing system with local community leaders and mentors, staff members, teachers, whoever it might be. They're providing day over day over day feedback. Refine this. The teams are testing, they're validating, they're creating prototypes, right? They're coming back in the reviewer, they're receiving feedback, they're updating their submission, they're updating their business plans, they're adding to their pitch decks. And that profile, which may have started either with one thing, is going to grow and grow and grow, or it might go from one thing to something completely different. That's really the beauty of these types of competitions is Reviewr is the repository and it's holding on to all the self-development activity throughout that process. And then eventually we're going to get to act number three, which kind of buttons everything up. So the teams can come in here and they're really just going to add a new form, right? They're going to say, hey, over the past 4, 5, 6 months, this is what we worked on. So here's my new business plan. Here's my new pitch deck. Here's my new executive summary. Here's my new problem. Here's the new solution. Here's my new team. And this is, of course, what actually gets pitched on. But we're actually able to go back and track from day number 1 to day number 361, where they started and where they're at now. And again, it might be the same idea, totally different execution plan. It might be a totally new team, totally new idea, totally new business. And that's kind of the beauty behind that. We will look here at kind of at the file uploads. I know I skipped past that on purpose. That's the next topic point. But again, I kind of wanted to showcase at a high level the concept of a profile and how, as you can see here, it's going to hold on to all the activities throughout the entire life cycle of this competition. So kind of jumping back to kind of our conversation. So that's great. Those are the 3 different acts. The next element is those different types of deliverables. And we just looked at one of them, which would be the problem solution target market. But on top of that, you have kind of in this model, we're always submitting, we're collecting feedback, we're refining, and then we're resubmitting. That process is going to rinse and repeat 100, 150, 200 times throughout the course of this competition. And that's what we want to see happening. But if that is happening, how do you manage that? Where are those deliverables being submitted? How is it being shared out to your team? How's feedback being captured? How's that communication occurring? If you have deliverables coming in from a wide variety of places and sources, is it videos? Is it YouTube videos? Spreadsheets? Is it emails? How do we kind of do that? And then how do you separate deliverables from different milestones and from different types of stages? So let's take a quick look at what that looks like in Reviewr. I think the best way to showcase this is to, again, go back to the MIT 100K and look at that concept called profile. So kind of a sneak peek, all of our clients get these really robust dashboards and it shows them kind of a pulse of what's going on. It shows them dates, deadlines, timelines, the entire cyclical life cycle of a competition. But really in this example, let's take a look at those profiles. So, I got maybe 25 teams in this use case who are all competing. I got FlickNet, I got Cocosmola, I got Microhard. But what I can basically do here is I can click on, say, for example, Reviewr, and I can open up their profile. And you can see that I have right off the bat all of the content captured in the initial intake of the application. So this is our act number 1 submission form. I got problems, solutions, I got all those I got everything right smack dab in front of me in one centralized place. Now, again, I talked a little bit about this is from an admin perspective, but the interfaces really don't change. But I can actually communicate one-to-one with the staff at Reviewr. I can provide them comments, I can provide them insights, I can provide them feedback. Maybe I want to log notes. So maybe I am meeting once a week with this company. We're going through things, we're providing real in-person feedback. I can log the results of those mentorship sessions in Reviewr. So it holds a track record of absolutely everything. I talked about file uploads. So if I jump to the top in this example, I got like 6 different file uploads. I got business plans, I got pitch videos, you name it. So in the theory, the team can receive feedback on documents. They can remove them. They can add new ones. They can have revisions. They can add new deliverables, but also the accessibility. So the idea here is I can click on, say, for example, this PowerPoint, and then boom, it shows up right smack dab in front of me. Historically, you have all these moving pieces, and you're providing feedback either about a piece of content or about a team itself. In Reviewr, I can do a combination of everything. I can leave them comments, I can leave them notes, but I can also go into their pitch deck. I can go to page number 4. I can highlight a section and leave notes right on the document itself. So we are one-to-one collaborating together. Again, very, very simple. It could be a video. I can watch it in the system. I can leave notes on the video while filling out score sheets and things like that. So I'm going to kind of pause there. Again, the main goal here was to kind of showcase, as you can see over time, this profile grew into this machine where I have numerous documents, all these comments and all these notes and all this kind of track record. But where did that come from? Who left that? How does this kind of translate to judging and scoring and feedback sharing? And that's kind of the last thing that I want to talk about today. Again, there's a whole bunch of other topics I think we will want to do at some point. But ultimately, we want to empower the judges. How do we, share this information with them in a way that makes sense? How do we allow them to execute on the task at hand in a timely manner, while providing the time and energy that the applicants actually deserve from them? How do we, share this to the right people at the right time with the right information? How do you pair up your judges or your mentors with the different teams? Is it based off of rounds or rooms or committees or phases or expertise? How do you do a combination of all of that? And then ultimately, I've seen so many competitions where sometimes the score sheets don't tell the whole story. So how do you leverage the data to make informed decisions off of it? That's kind of what we're going to look at next. So I'm going to go ahead and reshare over back to Reviewr, and let's actually log in as a MIT 100K. In this case, we're going to use fake judges and fake data. Obviously, it's private and sensitive information. Um, but wait, see what happens in Reviewr is we create these workflows. So you can add or import your team or your staff once they're in the system. What we want to do is then is assign them out to the entries. So again, think big picture with me. This could be judges scoring in rooms. It could be judges based off of expertise. It could even be judging. Maybe you want to pair up a mentor who's a local business leader or an alumni with a certain company that you think will kind of transform their lives. So we have this really robust pairing system. In this specific example with the MIT 100K, it's broken up by pretty much categories, right? So I got a SaaS-based category. So all of the SaaS or B companies that applied are going to get dropped into this bucket together. So SaaS companies are competing against other SaaS companies. And then the idea here is that you fill up that bucket with a judging committee. So when Simon, Paula, Mark, Judge Judy, Randy Jackson, Kevin, when they come into Reviewr, they're only going to have access to the teams that have been given access to them. With the Harvard New Venture competition, it's all done, in person. So we literally have, like what, 5, 6 rooms set up, and you got a judging team. You have different judging panels in each of these different 6 rooms, and the teams rotate through them. And so, how do you structure that in Reviewr? And this is how you would do so. So this is great and all, but I want to also kind of highlight how things like mentorship could work, but also, maybe you've got so many SaaS-based companies that physically 5 judges can't score all of them. You need to kind of assign them out differently. So I can actually open up my bucket and it's going to show me a listing of all of my companies. So I got Starblocks, NetChill, Snapple, Reviewer, etc. And it shows me exactly how many judges are assigned to them and then who those judges are. So for some of our clients to say, hey, you know what? I just want to make sure that every submission gets scored 3 times. So they can literally type in what the maximum and minimum number of entries per judge is, and boom, the system assigns it out. On top of that, what if there's a conflict of interest? What if this is an investor that has a competing interest in another organization? So, for example, if Mark cannot score Starbucks because I know these are fake names, but maybe he is an investor in Folgers or I don't know, Caribou Coffee. I could then uncheck Starbucks, and then boom, now when Mark logs in, he's now going to see Tweeter, Zoom, Reviewer, and Spotify. So we have really powerful one-to-one. Again, maybe this isn't even judging. Maybe you want to say, hey, you know what? This submission will be a great fit for Reviewer. So now Mark is going to come in and be just a mentor and provide only comments and notes to that company. Now, if you think through like what a judging process may look like, this is where the rubber really meets the road. So when Mark or your judges come into the platform, this could be either virtual or it could be in person. Literally, you might have like a roster of, hey, these are the companies who are pitching in this order. Judge then clicks on their name, boom, it opens up in real time. The only difference is maybe you don't need their round 1 information. Maybe you just want the live pitch scorecard. They can leave their comments, they can leave their scores, they can leave their notes. That way, when the competition wraps up, tabulations happen in real time. There's no waiting. It's 100% accurate. Literally, entrepreneurs can get feedback on demand, on the spot, not wait 4 weeks, 5 weeks later. In the sense of a virtual competition, the beauty kind of this is that there's a split screen so that the judges can actually side by side physically view the profile. They can see Act 1 information. They can jump up here and look at all the file uploads. They can look at Act 3 information. They can fill out their score sheet off to the right. You can see that if I do this, my point total is going to change. The system does allow them to log comments and notes. It's custom scoring. So in this use case, again, this is the scorecard that's being utilized, but maybe from a feedback perspective, the judges don't, or the organization doesn't want to share back the score. They don't want them to see the total score. They don't want them to see the score per question. They don't want just the comments, or maybe there's just an overall comment. The endless opportunities of how you want to do this. All we want to see is there's some type of feedback sharing that's happening. Why do they score the way that they did? And let the frickin' teams know, right? Allow them to take that feedback, whether it's critical or not, and grow. So the general premise here is that the judges can simply access the information, fill out their score sheets. Again, you'll see that it does auto tabulate, so there's no human errors, no spreadsheets. If the judge want to pulls the file uploads, in this example, we have got a business plan. This might be a 35-page business plan. The judge can literally see the document while filling out their scores and their notes. Maybe they want to highlight a certain section and leave comments or annotations or notes. They can do so. They can collaborate with other judges. They can communicate potentially with the entrepreneurs. Totally up to you. But as you can see here, it's very, very interactive. And again, the entire idea is to provide the greatest experience, quote, experience as humanly possible. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. I'm going to switch screen shares over. Again, the idea behind these different types of these webinars is it's driven by you. So if there's certain feedback or insights that you have for us, different topics that you want to talk about, please do let us know. I try to keep them to about 30 minutes. I will be following up with this recording, but also a link. I'm going to give you access to this MIT 100K use case. You can click around. You can kind of see in real time how this competition structure is being ran, and hopefully there's maybe just one small thing that you can take away and apply to your program, and I consider this a win. So really appreciate your time today, and as always, if there's anything that Reviewr can do for you, please do let us know.